Hello and welcome back to Taliesin's Map Deity Chart Mythstreams. Thank you for watching today. And yeah, I mentioned last Mythstream that we're getting close to the end of the main figures of our chart, the main deities that I want to go over, at least in the Mythstreams. But we still haven't done a Mythstream on Vishnu, one of the most important gods. And part of this was that we have done a previous stream that was not a live stream, but a pre-recorded stream. It's in my video section, and we went pretty thoroughly in a two-part stream over the Celtic Vishnu parallel to Cú Chulainn and back to the Norse parallel to Fenrir. And that's a 3 to 4 hours of stream on Vishnu, and then I also made my own extensive video touching on that parallel, fleshed out even more in a pre-made video on my channel as well. So I've kind of, in a way, done the Vishnu topic to death a little bit, or just covered the main basis already elsewhere. So I was kind of debating whether we should even do a stream on Vishnu, but to kind of, as we come to the end of the list, I wanted to have a bit of a discussion of some of the further things we can look at concerning Vishnu in our deity chart series here, because there's always more to say. There's always more parallels to look at, especially for such an important and sprawling, massive deity, right? Yes, thank you, James, and thanks for joining. Thank you. And yeah, I Vishnu is there. There are several other parallels that we can look at to extend our understanding, or theoretical parallels, speculative ones that we can touch on. And then, of course, there are a few goddesses I want to potentially, or a couple of goddesses more, that we could do in our deity chart myth streams before it's all wrapped up. But in any case, the thing about Vishnu is there's always controversy. There's always plenty of disagreement on this particular topic. It's sort of one of the most hot button gods or topics for some possibly obvious reasons, especially with the parallels that I have presented. So maybe to begin with, I could just kind of highlight what those are, and that could help frame what we're talking about, and I could see if there's any things I can respond to. Also, I'm open to questions on this topic that I could answer today on the stream, so feel free to post them. But yeah, obviously, Vishnu is one of the most important gods in Hinduism even today. So he's a very live deity, a live concern, and a central deity for many people in the world. And so when I present the parallel that I've presented, I get critiques and anger and criticisms from basically two different sides. This is a good question. Could Nevin be Lakshmi? That's a good question. We'll see if we can look at that. But yeah, there's basically two sides of where, if you present this parallel, there are two main camps that will be attacking you from both sides. If you say Vishnu is actually the parallel of Fenrir and of Cú Chulainn and of Typhon, as I've said here, and of Set, even in the Egyptian material, because first of all, this appears to be inconsistent or negative relative to people who worship Vishnu and who take Vishnu as the central Hindu deity and all of that. And secondly, there are people who say Fenrir, Norse, people who are concerned with Norse mythology and Norse paganism will say Fenrir cannot be a deity. Compared to a deity, Fenrir is negative and to, evil in our tradition or what have you, our interpretation. Therefore, you are relativizing the negative aspect of Fenrir by comparing him to a deity, or comparing, or there are Celtic concerned people who say to me that you can't compare Cú Chulainn to Fenrir. Fenrir is bad. Cú Chulainn is a noble warrior. And so that is, everyone has a sensitive spot on this topic, it seems like. And so, yeah, the main thing that I want to kind of say on that is that we absolutely cannot approach comparative mythology and this topic if we actually want to look at to pursue the truth. We can't look at it in these lenses of what we are attached to, what our sensitive spot is, to try to demand or tell the material to be a certain way. We can't say to the material, to the data, to the myths that we have, we can't say you can't be this way. Fenrir, Cú Chulainn, you cannot parallel Fenrir, etc. Vishnu, or Fenrir, you cannot parallel Vishnu. We, it's sort of a childlike way to approach a pursuit of truth, as if what we want the picture to be should govern and dictate what the facts are pointing to, what the parallels are pointing to. So that's why I obviously, well, to me, it's obvious that I did not set out to make upset people by making an edgy identification. It is not in a pursuit of edginess to say Fenrir mythically parallels Vishnu. It is looking at the actual narratives that we have and how we can trace them to a shared origin. So that also implies that each branch can transform and reinterpret those narratives and the deity figure attached to them in different ways and can value them differently in their own tradition while still tracing back to a shared origin. So that's kind of how comparative mythology works. And sometimes when we look thoroughly enough at an issue like this, it will give us results that we are happy with and that fit with our preconceptions, and other times it won't necessarily, right? So I think it's almost silly to have this response, because it's like it should go without saying, but I get this kind of response. So first of all, people will say, like, these are real deities to many people, and they can't change, like, to a negative, from a negative to a positive to a negative. But within academic comparative mythology, within any kind of thorough comparative mythology, it is well established, it is sort of a truism that this is documented in numerous places, that one branch, one tradition will take the same figure from the same root and treat them positively, while in another they may treat them negatively. So this is kind of, this premise gets refuted very easily in academic comparative mythology, at least. It's kind of like, again, just a foundational principle that is used in comparative mythology because it's been so well demonstrated that this happens, that comparative mythologists don't really think too much about it because it is seen frequently. For example, Gaiomard of the Uranic material is the primordial giant alongside of a divine cow, and he gets killed, and his he is in this Ymir type of position, according to Bruce Lincoln, which I think is correct. And Ymir is treated as negative, or at least as a sort of ambivalent figure who is Snorri treats as even having an evil aspect to him. All right, not as a not god, as a non-god. So you have these two different branches treating this deity, this figure, quite differently. The primordial giant who is there alongside the cow and gets killed in the cosmogenesis. You have, as I've gone pretty thoroughly into, the major case of Ahriman. And Ahriman does all of the things in the creation myth that Odin does. And of course, comparative mythologists have noticed this as well. Bruce Lincoln as well noticed that Odin is doing the same things, essentially, that Ahriman is doing in the Avestan material. But Ahriman is the pure evil being. Odin is the pure, he is the good being, the good, wise one, who is the Allfather. And so there are different ways to explain that, but as I've shown, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the Rudra type god was just demonized, because Ahriman still has the associations that Rudra Shiva has with the peacock, and with darkness. The guna of Shiva, of Rudra Shiva, is darkness, tamas guna, and Rudra is the lord of deception. He is, as I went into in my previous stream, he is the lord of deception and thieves. And that repeats with Odin and Finnmakul, as I showed. It's a consistent trait of the Rudra type, whereas Ahriman is the lord of the lie, the Druj. And mythically speaking, most of what Ahriman does is repeating that Odinic creation myth role that we see esoterically in the Rudra myths and in the Rudra type myths of Europe, very consistently, where he attacks the creator god, that is Prajapati in the Vedic material, but it's Ahura Mazda in the Avesta material, attacks him first of all, and then secondarily attacks the figure who is the secondary being of creation. In the Vedic, it's Gyaush, the sky god, and it's Gaiomard in the Avestan, and it is Ymir in the Norse. That's the secondary sort of antagonism of the Odin Rudra type god, and that's what Ahriman also does. Ahriman first attacks Ahura Mazda, that's Prajapati. Secondly, he attacks Gaiomard, that's the Ymir, and then the humans are born from that, out of that. So it's this. A lot of that mythology is directly sort of demonized. It's just demonized Rudra material. So we see that this happens through theological shifts, through changes over time, through disagreements, but also it can happen through just focus. Like if one tradition focuses more on one god and forgets or focuses less on another god, certain aspects of that god that they don't focus on can be forgotten. When a portion of a god's mythos is forgotten or repressed or what have you, that can lead to a sort of smaller understanding, a smaller depiction of that god. I'm thinking of Fenrir in this case, the Fenrir type. If originally Fenrir was part of a larger, more two-sided, more ambivalent god type, the Vishnu god type, who had a destructive side and a benevolent side, over time, the focus of the Norse material seems to be more on Odin. Odin is the antagonist of Vishnu, of Fenrir, of the Fenrir type, just as Rudra is with Vishnu. And so focus centers more on Odin, less focus on the Vishnu type of the Norse. And over time, only the more negative, destructive side of Fenrir kind of gets remembered or is just retained. And also, of course, if they more intensely and fervently worshipped Odin, they would more negativize his antagonist, which is Fenrir, just as if a Shaivite focuses more on Shiva, they will more negativize Vishnu as the antagonist, like Narasimha, of course, the antagonist of Shiva, uh, in their tradition, in their texts over time. So that's kind of what happens with that. So the point is, this is very like commonplace that this sort of thing can happen, and so we have to, yes, and there may be, I think there are, yeah, positive. There's probably a remnant of the positive side of the Norse Vishnu in the legendary hero Hildebrand, because Hildebrand, his fragmentary sort of his short little story about him, it is very similar to Cú Chullainn's story, where he fights his own son. Yeah, and that, of course, has its own Vedic parallels, and Cú Chulainn does as a whole, affirming that up. So, yeah, so the positive side. One of the issues with the Vishnu type is he's so broad, encompassing everything, encompassing destructive and benevolent, that he has multiple aspects. Like, it's such a focus of Vishnu that he has like 10 or 12, what is it, 10 or 12, must be 12 avatars, right? So he is like this divided up into avatars. Well, some of those avatars, even in the Vedic material, are destructive. Whether it's Narasimha is destructive, Varaha is destructive as well. Both of them have positive sides too, but he has these destructive avatars. And so one of the questions is like, when the Norse tradition or the Greek tradition treats this god, do they break off the like destructive aspect as its own like negative being who is separate from the god, or do they treat them all as like a higher unity? And that kind of thing kind of gets lost over the years, whether Fenrir was being sort of broken off and saying, well, actually, we think this manifestation is its own separate demonic force, or did they retain an idea where he is a destructive force from a higher beneficent deity, where Hildebrand was the positive side? Same thing goes with Typhon. Is Typhon a branch of a higher divinity in the Greek esoteric understanding, or was he being broken off as his own separate thing, and they just had a theological difference, or they just theologically disagreed, that this was really part of that larger deity? They just saw him, that aspect as a negative force of its own. So those are things that you can't really know for sure how they saw it esoterically over time, but you can trace back to the root understanding in the Proto-Indo-European, where it is, the parallels suggest that there was this larger deity that we see, like with the Hindu Vishnu, where he has so many aspects that some are beneficent and some are destructive, and they are Rudra does as well, though. That's the thing, right? Rudra has destructive aspects as well, but these are harmonized. These are they are branched. They're just branching off from a higher good divinity, and so they serve their purpose in the cosmos. So if you were to focus only on the destructive aspect, you would have an obscured, sort of twisted understanding of what they are all about, when they are sort of redeemed in the whole of the higher deity, in a sense. And oftentimes the destructive aspect, like Narasimha, for example. Narasimha is the lion man avatar of Vishnu, and for example, in the Linga Purana, he rampages and is going that the gods are afraid that he will destroy them and destroy the cosmos. Shiva has to confront him to stop him, and has to transform into Sharabha, who kills Narasimha and skins him, and then essentially Narasimha, his soul or whatever, returns to the higher Vishnu, essentially. And this is sort of the trend you see, where the destructive side takes over, or has its myth, has its story about the destructive aspect, but it then like returns to the higher Vishnu, who is above and beyond that sort of destructive aspect of its on its own. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that makes sense. So I'm gonna Fenrir does parallel Cuchulainn. It's just the fact that he's demonized so much, it's kind of hard to break this off. Exactly. So exactly, it's like Cuchulainn is much more well-rounded, but his specific narrative mythemes do parallel Fenrir, what Fenrir does, because Cuchulainn is the one who is the glory seeker, just like Fenrir is the glory. He's seeking glory with what he's doing when he gets bound, and Cuchulainn is the one who gets bound to the stone, just as Fenrir gets bound to the stone. Cuchulainn is the hound slash wolf. Cú means hound, but hound slash it means both hound and wolf, actually, or in a technical sense. But he is the hound, Fenrir is the wolf. So clearly they are paralleling. Cuchulainn is the one who has to be cooled down by 3 vats, and he breaks the first 2 vats of water from his heat, and the third one pacifies him because of his warrior rage. And Fenrir is the one who has to be bound by 3 fetters, and the first 2 he breaks, and the third one neutralizes him. So those parallel. Cuchulainn is also the figure who has to be fettered in another place, in the sickbed of Cuchulainn, where it is the story of Fond, and he's distraught from, let's see, sickbed. Okay. Well, anyways, it's actually hard to find this text, so maybe I won't. But you can look up the sickbed of Cuchulainn, and yeah, so he has to be fettered and brought in when he is he's grieving, and he's it is the sort of romantic plot with Ever and Fond. Anyways, I wish I could pull that up right now, but I can't find everything on the spot. He is bound and fettered, just as Fenrir is. So he's the fettered hound, just as he's also, all of these things. So he parallels Fenrir, but he is much more well-rounded as the hero. But then he also reincarnates as the boar of 4 Mile, because the boar of 4 Mile is more the end times destructive omen of death, and the end times who signals the coming death of Finn, just as so like when Fenrir kills Odin, actually, and then has to be killed by Odin's son. Well, the boar of 4 Mile appears. He's described in the identical poetic metaphors, kennings, or rather just description that Cuchulainn is described with, where it says, if a bunch of apples were to fall from an apple tree onto the bristles of his head, of his back, not a single one would fall to the ground, because they'd all be spiked on the bristles. That is said about Cuchulainn, and then it's said about the boar of 4 Mile that appears in this sort of the hunt of the hunt of Shlív Naman Finn, and the death of Finn, or the chase of is it the chase of Shlív Naman Finn and the death of Finn? In any case, they're hunting the boar, and it's this rampaging boar, right? It's described with the poetic metaphor that Cuchulainn is described with, and then it says when it appears, it is the omen that Finn will soon die. And of course, the story is called The Death of Finn, just like, the end times with Fenrir and Odin, it's about the death of Odin. But then the grandson of Finn has to be the one to kill this boar, and he puts his knee on the lower jaw of the boar of 4 Mile, stretches his jaws wide while his men pull out the entrails of the boar. And that's how he kills it, by placing his knee on the lower jaw and stretching his mouth open. Well, the son of Odin puts his foot on the lower jaw of Fenrir, stretches his mouth open, and stabs him in the mouth, killing him. So, and of course, and Odin died right before, Finn dies right after. So it's the same thing. And so my point with that is that the boar of 4 Mile looks like the separated, broken off, pure force of destruction, comparable to the pure force of destruction that Fenrir becomes in the end times when he breaks free. Okay, so in that sense, the Irish tradition is doing a similar thing where they're sort of breaking off a section that's the pure destructive aspect of the rampaging sort of end times aspect, but they are esoterically linking them by using the exact poetic description of the apples falling onto the bristles of his back or head, and the mouth that is open, and flakes of red flakes are coming out of it in both the boar of 4 Mile and Cú Chulainn's warp spasm. Okay, so those are two different poetic aspects that are the same between these. So anyways, yeah, that's just a way to think about the Celts kind of did break off a pure destructive aspect as well, but just a little bit different of a division. But they're acknowledging that the boar is continuous with Cú Chulainn by the poetic description. So it seems that they clearly knew that to be the case as well. Okay, so I'm gonna go to a little part of my book where I touch on this problem a bit. One moment. Okay, so this is from my chapter, Nate/Neto, a Celtic Vishnu, from my book, chapter 14. And yes, this was sort of one of the starting pieces that sort of made me start to understand how the European Vishnu and the Celtic Vishnu really were appearing. Because, look, if you don't follow what I'm saying here, it's pretty much like in the Celtic mythology world, making a good parallel to Vishnu in Europe, it's like doesn't exist, because I can't say there's nothing, obviously, but you can't really make a good full parallel, I don't think, unless you get the right parallel. And so there hasn't, to my mind, there hasn't been, like, you can't really, it doesn't make a lot of sense. People haven't made a lot of sense out of who the Celtic Vishnu could be. And the problem is, most people haven't realized that it is like the destructive war aspect that is much more preserved in Europe. And the other aspects are there, especially if you look at Cú Chulainn, they're there, the protector, all these other aspects, cow protector. Cú Chulainn is the cow protector, like as a Vishnu is. And these other things are there in Cú Chulainn and others, but the prominence of the warrior, destructive aspect, it's more in your face. So if you don't realize that Vishnu is so prominently a war god and a destructive god sometimes, then you won't understand what's happening. So there's a figure named Neto, Mars Neto, or rather Neton, Mars Neton in Occitania, so in Spain. And there is a preserved figure called, where, let's see, it's Macrobius who reports on this. And he describes Mars Neto in this way. And I think this is a good description to get the idea. Pagan. Yeah, pagan. So Mars Neton is, it says, the fervor which the mind. So this is a description of what the Celts themselves of Spain saw Mars Neton to embody. So it says, so Neton embodies the fervor with which the mind becomes incensed and aroused to anger, and at other times to virtue, and sometimes to the excess of temporary fury, through which things also arise in wars, and they named that Mars Neton, essentially. In short, it is to be pronounced the effect of the sun, from which the heat of the soul, from which the heat of the blood is aroused. That is what the Celts called Mars. So he's not just saying what Mars is in a Roman context, to be clear. He's saying this is what the Celts were attaching to their Mars, who they called Neton. And I think this is just such a great, concise, perfect description of the paradox of the Vishnu type, especially in Europe. So just read this passage and you'll understand the Vishnu type in Europe. Because, let's see, because he is the fervor. He's pure fervor, and a lot of times that is virtue. It's pure virtue, and that is so much of what the Vishnu type is, like embodying this intensity of virtue, and that comes through in Cú Chulainn. Cú Chulainn essentially, can't back down from a challenge. He can't tell a lie. He can't break a taboo. Essentially, that sort of thing. We see this in Vishnu in the Vedic and Hindu material as well. The Vishnu type, it's very much about purity of virtue, I think, from my, my broad and sometimes superficial understanding of how Vishnu is treated. There's a lot that has to do with, the pure goodness and it could be said that the sort of pure goodness, pure virtuous aspect of Vishnu has come to dominate over the warrior aspect in Hinduism, in Vaishnavism and Hinduism, to an extent, I think. So you have these two sides that are there within the Vishnu type, where he is the fervor of anger and warrior fury, but also the fervor of virtue, and that comes to dominate. The virtue side comes to dominate in Hinduism, to my understanding, and the warrior fury sometimes appears to dominate in the myths of the European more. But if you see that they are both embodying sort of the two manifestations of this intense fury that is like pure heat of the sun, as it describes. So it is to be pronounced the effect of the sun, from which the heat of the soul, from which the heat of the blood is aroused. That's exactly what the Vishnu type is about. So Vishnu himself, he is like the god most purely embodying, identified with Tejas. Tejas is this ardent heat that leads on to these types of fury. And it is, it's just like he's like a heat generator. And this is why I sometimes describe him as like this nuclear reactor of the cosmos, just like generating this tejas of the cosmos. Okay. And that obviously, a nuclear reactor has to be kept in control. And if it can erupt in a sense, he's like a volcano. And so when it erupts, it is a destructive force if it is not kept in bounds. When it is kept in bounds, it is producing this vital aspect of the cosmos, which comes out also in the intensity of virtue. Cú Chulainn himself, of course, in my video on Cú Chulainn, I go into this passage where he sits in the snow and all the snow around him melts because of the heat of his body. When he's in his warrior fury, returning to Conchobar and everyone else there, they have to come out and put him into vats of cold water. As I said, 3 vats of cold water to try to cool down his overwhelming warrior heat, his frenzy, and the heat of his body bursts the vat. So he's all about this excessive heat. But he is a hero in the Irish depiction. He is directing that to good ends, but he's constantly also dangerous and threatening those around him because he's this overwhelming power that can get out of control. They're having to control him. They're having to put him in vats. They're having to fetter him and tie him up when he is grieving and jumping. He's like leaping around the countryside, and they have to take him in fetters and when he's in this warrior fury returning to Concovar, he says, if someone, there's like an interesting moment where he says essentially that he will kill everyone in the dun if he's not met, and if his like challenge isn't met, and he yeah, it's this interesting moment. Anyways, he is threatening friend and foe, or foe and friend rather. There, he is a threat to even his allies in that mode where he has to be sort of calmed back down. That is what Fenrir is embodying, that side, kind of to the exclusion of the others, but it is a branch off of this larger concept, this larger deity concept. Okay. Let's see. What else was I gonna point to here on this? Well, okay. Oh yeah, I wanted to go down a little bit on this chapter. Vishnu aids Indra in battle with his Tejas. So Vishnu is like the source and giver of Tejas, even to Indra. And of course, Fergus is the Indra of Cú Chulainn's story. O Lord, resorting to the foam of the waters that was strengthened by the splendor of Vishnu, thou hast slain Vritra of yore. So Vishnu as the source of this strengthening. And let's see what else. And I should say, yeah, I kind of got this from reading Roger Woodard's book on Indo-European sacred space. He identifies that it is the god Terminus who is the actual parallel of Vishnu in Rome. And Terminus like goes about through the sacred space in certain rituals, accompanied by Mars. Mars and Terminus go together, just as we see here, Vishnu and Indra side by side. So Mars would be like Indra. And at times it's like, I think there are references to like Mars Terminus, as if they're kind of aspects, connected aspects. But in any case, they're kind of like side by side. And as Terminus, that means he is like the boundary marking pillar. And that is essentially, Vishnu is the god of the sacred space, of space in general, conquering space. So a lot of what Vishnu in the Vedas is about, and his role in the ritual is marking out the sacred space, which sort of magically, ritually causes the conquering space of the armies that they're doing ritual to him or whatever, to conquer. And so it's like Vishnu, go forth and conquer, and he will extend the sacred space, which is then followed upon by the actual armies, conquering, to sort of repeat and embody that Vishnu force of conquering, of claiming space, and embodying this resoluteness of the boundary pillar, all of that. Okay, the banner that Vishnu provided was created from his own radiant energy, Tejas, shining like the sun. So you can see this is exactly like Mars Neto that we just read about. With the raising of his banner, decorated with garlands, bells, and other small objects, Indra defeated the enemy. Okay. The Vedic Yupa is a sacrificial post, and it is identified with the Yupa belongs to Vishnu. So, and then there's also the story of Narasimha bursting out of a pillar. So that's, goes back to the same theme. Okay, let's see. Indra is at times drawn into Vishnu's conquering advance. Vishnu, in taking his 3 steps, transcends and conquers the spaces of the universe. His famous 3 steps, that's one of his main myths in the Vedas. Vishnu is the god who conquers and creates space. Thus, the space that Vishnu is often associated with can more specifically be the living space conquered through war. This conquering of space was enacted via Vishnu's role in the sacrifice as Lord of Sacred Space. So here Woodard says, the questing journey of the sacrificer and priests into the great sacred space of the Mahavedi, the staking out of the space with altars and huts, and the continued progress toward the columns that stand on its distal eastern border, a boundary which is not, constitute an odyssey in which gods of war play a fundamental role. Most notable in the event is Vishnu, the god who transcends, conquers, and expands space. Indra, most renowned of the warrior gods, accompanies him. And then he talks about Mars and his role and how that is mirroring what you see with Vishnu and Indra. Homologous to the conspicuous presence of the warrior gods, Indra and Vishnu in the space of the Mahavedi, is the presence of Mars in the space of the Agar Romanus. To phrase the matter somewhat differently, whatever it is that Indra and Vishnu are doing within the Mahavedi, Mars is doing the same within the Agar Romanus. The procession of Vedic priests through the Mahavedi and the ambarvalic movement of Roman priests through the Ager Romanus are both descended from a common ancestral rite of the questing journey from the small sacred space into the great. The journey is an invasion. It's like you're ritually enacting the conquering invasion before you do it with your actual armies, essentially. The gods of war must be invoked to take the lead, to vanquish the opponent, to secure possession of the invaded space. As warrior Indra and especially Vishnu, the god who enlarges space, are bound to the Vedic Yupa, the marker of the unboundary, source and means of blessing. So Mars is linked to the Roman terminus, deified as terminus. He is present and invoked around the distal rim of the Ager Romanus at those terminal points of ritual salience. And so, yeah, this appears to be the correct way to look at things. When you start to understand Vishnu as this god of war and god of this pillar as well, of course, Cú Chulainn gets bound to a pillar, identified with it essentially when he's killed. I think that repeats the theme of Terminus, and he is this sort of protecting, or his, the role of the boundary pillar is also protecting the space, but also being this extroverted warrior going forth. So he kind of can do both. Nate, of course, Nate, I think, is the Irish Naton. So you have the Spanish Celtic Naton or Naton, and then you have the Irish Nate, and also spelled N-E-T. So it seems to be, if you take off the O-N ending, you get Nate, like this, Nate. So it seems pretty clear that this is the best parallel for Naton. And once you understand that, you realize that Naton is a war god associated. His spouse is Nevin, which is the goddess of war, essentially. And he is referred to as dangerous Nate. His sort of description in the Irish material is that he's dangerous, but he's a very high god. In the genealogies of the gods, he's higher than all the Tuatha. He's higher than Delvith, who is like the Purusha. He's higher than the Purusha, if you want to look at it in Vedic terms. And he's essentially, he is the son of Indwi, and I've shown that Indwi is a form of Finn. Okay, because Indwi is called Indwi Folt Find. Well, Find, that second element, is the name of Finn. And Folt Find just means, Folt means head. So it's like, Find means white, it's like white-headed. So Indwi Folt Find means the wise, white-headed one. And that's this one of the highest gods, okay, in the genealogy. Clearly, the wise, white-headed god is Finn McCool, the white-headed god of wisdom that we know. So it seems pretty clear that Indwi Folt Find is another name of Finn. His son is then Dangerous Nate. Dangerous Nate is then the father of Delvith. Delvith is the Purusha. So this maps extremely fascinatingly and well to the Vedic material, because Vishnu, in the Shatapatha Brahmana and esoteric descriptions, Vishnu forms the sacred space that is like the womb or ground floor, from which the Purusha emerges, which is like in the fire sacrifice of the Shatapatha Brahmana. The Purusha is the sacrificial fire, the fire altar that is built up, like in the Agni Kayana version. There's different versions, but Agni Kayana, the fire altars, built up with these bricks on a sacred space. And then as they're doing it, they're doing esoteric identifications, saying that this fire altar and the fire itself are Purusha that they're making, and that the ground floor is like the womb that it's being born from. And that basis is like, it gets identified with Vishnu, okay, in some ways. So, and of course, Vishnu is the one asked in the Shatapatha Brahmana or in the Atharva Veda, to give the heat or fervor for the sacrifice. So all these things, like the underlying space itself, the sacred space that we just saw, is identified with Vishnu, and also the energy that will be the sacrifice. You can see how that precedes the fire altar itself, and sort of gives birth to it in a way, just as Nate is father of Delvaith. And Delvaith means, the forming fire, Delvaith. So that's what it means. And Delvaith then is the parent of Eriu, Earth, just as the Purusha is the creator of Earth, Gaia. Okay. And the cosmic egg that is the Earth. Okay. So it all follows in the same sort of pattern. So that's why you have to take this pattern seriously. And then, of course, in Nate's other descriptions, the main other description is that he is the lord of Nate's stonehouse. And in Nate's stonehouse, Aiv, which means fire, is buried. He's killed, quote unquote, and buried. And so I think this is like, because Nate is the lord of a stone house, to me that screams a sacred space or shrine of some kind. The stone house, which of course it's like a fort in the actual architecture that it's referring to. But yeah, the stone house as a fort or sacred space, yeah, it kind of esoterically suggests that he's a lord of a space, this stone house space, in which fire gets buried. So it's like a creation of a fire shrine of some kind by burying Aiv there. And so I think that kind of fits together well, to suggest that things that you might expect are lining up correctly for Nate to be the name of this deity in the Irish material. And then Cú Chulainn is the incarnation of Nate, which kind of plays out his myths much more fully than what we have of Nate. Nate himself, the myths are very fragmentary. This is kind of all we really have for Nate himself, even though he's this. So we have Nate, and he's like this extremely high god in the genealogy, like I just described. But there's only a few mentions of what he actually does, Nate, and he's dangerous Nate. Why is this high god so dangerous? But then you have Cú Chulainn, and he is dangerous Cú Chulainn. I mean, I don't know if he's actually called dangerous in those words, but he is dangerous in what he does. He's treated as dangerous repeatedly, of course, as we went into. And he plays out a much more extended version. He's essentially the incarnation of what would be seen as, multiple of the avatars or aspects in the Vedic version. They're all combined in Cú Chulainn. Cú Chulainn is described as repeatedly as dark. Well, Vishnu is Krishna, meaning dark. Cú Chulainn is as a boy, he kills the guard dog, shepherd dog, of Cullen, Cú Chulainn, and becomes the guardian dog for him. Cú Chulainn becomes the guard dog, and that implies guarding his flocks. So he is the protector of the cattle of Cú Chulainn. Vishnu is the Gopala, Govinda, the cow loving and cow protecting god. And of course, as the lord of the sacred space and all of that, he is also a protector in that sense. Then Vishnu is Vamana, right? Or Vamana. And Vamana is the dwarf. Cú Chulainn is repeatedly and I went into this in my video on him, he's called small. So why is this incredible warrior called small? It's not, and why is he called small and dark at the same exact time? It's not an accident. It's because of this. He comes from this deity type. Let's see. Those are the main ones. You can watch my video for more information on the specific parallels Okay, I won't get too off on that tangent if possible. Lord of the Sacred Space. And then, of course, we have Naton, or N-W-Y-T-H-O-N in the Welsh, also spelled N-A-E-T-H-O-N. N-A-E-T-H-O-N is like Naton. It's very similar to Nate. And Naton, or Newton, however it's pronounced in the Welsh versions, he is in a role that matches Vishnu's role in the destruction of Daksha's sacrifice. Okay, so I go into that in my Carnunos video, as well as in my Vishnu and Cú Chulainn video, I believe. So you can go check that out, where the Welsh version fits right into this pattern. All right, what else did we want to go to? Okay, and from there, let's see if I can cover some We Are the Cows. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, he's a protector. He's a hero. He's tragic. What I wanted to say on all of this is that Nathan. What I wanted to say on this was that there are multiple instances where Vishnu avatars are destructive. So it's like people have to be confronted with this, or be forced to look at this sometimes. That if you want to do comparative mythology, that is, you don't have to do comparative mythology if you don't like what it shows you. But if you want to, then you have to look at the fact that Vishnu has these destructive aspects, and therefore these parallels exist. So to list through them, if we can, Narasimha, especially in the Linga Purana, but also in other Puranas, Narasimha is threatening to destroy the cosmos because he's in a battle fury, just like Cú Chulainn. It's not like he's like evil, but he is. He had just saved the cosmos a moment before, right? And from another demon king, and he's kind of worked up, and now he's threatening his battle rage is threatening the cosmos. They have to ask Shiva to come stop him. And he becomes haughty. He's haughtiness, just as Fenrir is sort of haughty and embodies this desire for glory that's an overwhelming overflow of this heat that we went into, that can overflow into virtue or excessive haughtiness. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what's overtaking him in this moment, at least. And then Shiva confronts him and turns into, or emanates, Virabhadra. And actually, Narasimha then attacks Virabhadra. And it's a weird moment where Virabhadra doesn't defeat him. Actually, after Narasimha attacks him, it's like he has to emanate another emanation. So it's almost like he defeats Virabhadra, which I think is being implied. Just like Fenrir kills Odin, consumes, whatever, kills Odin in the in Ragnarok. Well, this emanation of Shiva that tries to first confront Narasimha, Narasimha attacks him, and it's like he has neutralized, or he has forced Virabhadra to then emanate another form to really defeat him, just as Odin has to pass the responsibility onto his son Vidar to actually defeat Fenrir. Yeah, it's fascinating. And then once Sharabha is emanated from Virabhadra, Sharabha defeats Narasimha, okay, and neutralizes him and all of that. But that's just one instance where he is sort of destructive or challenging the gods. In the Shiva Purana and the Linga Purana and Vayu Purana, multiple versions of Daksha's sacrifice that I think I've touched on these multiple versions in my Daksha's sacrifice and Carnunos video. But in any case, Daksha's doing the illicit sacrifice, and Vishnu is there in some of these versions as the lord of that sacrifice. And either he confronts Virabhadra there as well, and then like just goes away, or whatever, they have a confrontation and then they go apart, or he gets beheaded by Virabhadra. So there is one or two versions where he actually gets beheaded by Virabhadra. And I think that parallels the fate of the Welsh version, Nuthon, who his heart gets cut out and given to his son for in the parallel of the Daksha's destruction of Daksha's sacrifice. So I think that is similar, as well as the Norse mythothin story in Gesta Danorum, where he is beheaded. So I think that survives in the Vishnu. Vishnu is there with the sort of illicit sacrificers in the Shiva Purana and other versions of this story, and confronts Virabhadra in that sense. Thirdly, you have Varaha, the boar. Varaha, the boar, avatar of Vishnu, goes on a rampage and has to once again be confronted by Sharabha, who in the Kalika Purana version, I think chapter 30, Kalika Purana chapter 30, he has this fight where Varaha, the boar, has been doing great things. He's a good avatar of Vishnu, and he essentially becomes the consort of Gaia, the earth, or sorry, of Prithvi, the earth goddess, and he commits a sin by making love with Prithvi when she is menstruating. Okay, so this is and then this is the first sign of sort of negative action, that he's broken sort of a rule, and then their activity, he's rampaging and jumping around and causing destruction and tidal waves, and he has these 3 boar sons from him who also are causing destruction, just sort of rampaging around. They become sort of animalistic. They could sort of, it's like Vishnu's avatar falls into his animalistic side of his avatar, of his boar avatar, and they're these giant boars destroying everything. And once again, they're threatening to destroy the cosmos, even though they have just participated in creating the cosmos in the story just before. That just sort of once they sort of fall into the Maya, the illusion of their own avatar, they identify with the animalistic side, whatever, they take it too far. And Sharabha, emanation of Shiva in the Kalika Purana, has to fight him and defeat him, and then Varaha becomes the sacrifice of the gods, which is a positive role. It's a positive outcome where he becomes the sacrifice. And remember, Cú Chulainn reincarnates as the boar of Fourmile. The boar of Fourmile has the exact poetic descriptions as Cú Chulainn. So you can see the rampaging boar shares attributes with both Varaha rampaging and Narasimha rampaging. So some of these myth themes kind of get recombined in interesting different ways. You then have, I think even in the Linga Purana story of Narasimha, Virabhadra recites the multiple times that he has killed avatars of Vishnu, which is interesting. And one of them, I think, is even the tortoise, Kurma. So that's a story that I don't know in detail, so that's another one to consider. You then have Varaha's son is called Vrika, which means wolf. Varaha, the boar, has a son named Vrika. Vrika, which means wolf, is rampaging through the forest that's sort of being overseen by the son of Shiva, which is Skanda, essentially. Skanda, Kartikeya, Kumara. And so Skanda has to go and fetter and bind Vrika, the son of Varaha, who is Vishnu, and Vrika means wolf. So Skanda, the son of Shiva, goes and binds this wolf son of the boar. You can see the wolf and boar concepts intertwining right there in Vishnu's mythos, and within Hindu mythology, the binding of the wolf son Vrika of Varaha is the only closest time to the binding of Fenrir. If you want to see an exact instance of a binding of a wolf by a son of Shiva, no less, just as Vidar is the son of Odin who kills Fenrir, it is surviving in the binding of Vrika, and then yeah, and then it's complicated. It's complex. I can't remember the exact details, but I think Skanda then returns, or it's one of Skanda's. It's actually one of Skanda's associates or helpers who binds him and waits for Skanda to return, and then Skanda, I think, either kills him or kills Varaha at that moment once he returns. So same kind of concepts being remixed in different ways. You then have Makha Vishnu. Makha this is found in like the Brahmanas, and I go into the exact citations for this in my video, of course. But you can also look this up, Makha Vishnu on Wikipedia even, or on the internet. Makha Vishnu this is all about the Pravargya, right? This is the myth behind the Pravargya ritual, which is like the prelude of the Agni Kayana, or rather, of the Soma sacrifice generally, I think. Yeah, the boar saved Bhumi Devi. Thank you. The boar saved Bhumi Devi, which is like, an aspect of Prithvi, or a name of Prithvi. Banva. Oh, very nice. But I didn't know that was linguistically connected to Banva. But yeah, Banva is one aspect of the Irish earth goddess. Eru, Banva, and Fotla. They're a triple earth goddess who would directly parallel Bhumi/Prithvi. So Banv is a field that hasn't been tilled for a year. So that's very interesting. Yeah. And yeah, so the boar had just saved her. It's like the earth diver kind of creation myth aspect, I think, somehow connected. But in any case, it's like a level of the creation myth where he saves the earth goddess, and then he falls into animalistic ways after that, and has to be restrained and defeated, just like Fenrir has to be contained and then ultimately defeated, even though he is raised by the gods. He's treated like Tyr's pet, essentially. He's, why is Fenrir like among the gods in the first place and kept with them as if, why isn't he just out in the wilds if he's such an enemy? Instead, it's like Tyr had known him and fed him since he was a child, and that's why he trusts Tyr. They trust one another. They know each other because they are integrated. They are connected. They are not he's not this wild demon from the woods or something. Okay, it's showing that they have this connection, I think, even there. And he's trusting of the gods. He's trusting of Tyr. Okay. Point is, we have Makha Vishnu, and Makha Vishnu faces, he is, it says in the passage that he's hungry for glory, that he wants to take the glory, rather. Just as Cú Chulainn is driven by glory, Fenrir is driven by glory in the prose edda version of his binding. Makha Vishnu, then, driven by glory, confronts all of the gods. He faces them down as if to fight them. And he's standing there ready to fight them, and he has a bow, and the gods convince these ants to go and chew the bowstring of Makha Vishnu, and they chew his bowstring, and I think it essentially snaps and severs the head of Makha Vishnu as he's facing down the gods in an attempt to be glorious, to seize glory for himself, etc. His severed head then becomes the sacrifice. Once again, he is the sacrifice. He's a god. He's fulfilling an extremely important role in that. And just because he's filled with this fervor of desiring glory doesn't make that evil, but you have to see, and you have to accept this aspect of Vishnu, that he repeatedly is antagonistic to the gods, oftentimes either overwhelmed by battle fury or desire for glory, and this sort of haughtiness that he embodies. Okay, so I've lost track now, but that's at least 5 different times that we can parallel in the Vishnu mythos. Okay, to what we see here, and that's from the Brahmanas earlier than the Puranas. and that is the basis of a Vedic rite, the Soma rite itself, the Pravargya. Okay, so it's extremely ancient. Actually, it might even be in the Taittiriya Samhita. It's in the Taittiriya something, which is part of the Yajurveda, or which is an aspect. It's one portion of the Yajurveda. Okay, so I think it's mentioned in the Yajurveda itself. So we'd have to double check that this Mahavishnu thing. It has very deep roots, and it makes sense because you have Cú Chulainn facing down this. It's like I see the Mahavishnu scene, especially, as very similar to Cú Chulainn's death, because Cú Chulainn is facing down all this army of other incarnated gods. His enemy there is Lugith. Lugith then, when Cú Chulainn binds himself to the stone, Lugith, he has a mortal wound and all that. Okay, so Lugith then confronts him. Lugith is apparently here just a form of Lu, I think, in this form of Lugith, because he does what Tyr does with Fenrir. When Fenrir is bound to the stone, Tyr's hand is in the mouth of Fenrir, and when he realizes he's been deceived, been bound, neutralized by being bound, he, as sort of an automatic reaction to being neutralized, he clamps down and severs the hand of Tyr. Cú Chulainn is bound to the stone, and right when he's neutralized by being attacked by Lugith to kill him on the stone, Cú Chulainn drops his own sword, and it severs the hand of Lugith. So it's this back-to-back double sort of action where the neutralization of the one bound to the stone instantaneously causes the reaction of him severing the hand of the one who did it, essentially. So it's the same double reaction, right? And so that's, and of course, Cú Chulainn is the hound. He's the bound hound, severing the hand of Lugith, who parallels Tyr. At the moment that he's neutralized, they're severing the hand of the one who is doing it. And Fenrir is the bound wolf instead of bound hound. They're both bound to stones. So it's like when Mahavishnu becomes the sacrifice, his head is severed. I believe Cú Chulainn, let's see, okay, I'm forgetting now if Cú Chulainn gets his head severed at that moment. Right, I think he does, but in any case, he gets killed, and I think his head is severed, right? Okay, and he gets, basically, it's a tableau of sacrifice because he is bound to a pillar stone, which is a sort of a classic sacrificial tableau. Okay, it's like Cú Chulainn gets identified with the metaphysical sacrifice, the esoteric sacrifice, when he is killed, just as Mahavishnu becomes the sacrifice. Awesome. Okay, so those are the frameworks. Now let's just jump over to some other possible interesting ones that we can look at. Hold on a second, actually. I'll be right back. I have to see if Josephus was going to join. I forgot to give him a link. Sorry about that, Josephus. Oh, no. Sorry. Okay. Well, Josephus, I got distracted. And here, I'm going to get you the link if you're still around, Josephus. Okay, posted the link. And if you have time, Josephus, and if you don't, that's okay. And I apologize. I forgot to give Josephus the link earlier. He was, I thought his Italian dinner would take longer. Josephus, welcome.
To everyone.
Welcome. Yeah, sorry, I didn't. I guess in my mind I thought your Italian dinner was gonna take longer, and then I just got talking and I couldn't.
Yeah, don't worry.
How is it going?
Everything is going good, and Italian dinner strangely didn't even take that long
Oh,
this
okay.
time.
Very
So
good.
yeah, I don't know if there's anything that maybe we want to go over together. If there's any passage in the Greek that we maybe want to look at.
Yeah, if you have anything in mind, you know, in the Greek, what are your thoughts on anything that should be brought up? Do you have anything? I was gonna say like, is it Proteus who wrestles with Menelaus is an interesting one as like a one we've touched on before, but
Yeah,
there's not
definitely.
too much descriptive stuff to dig into there, but it's an interesting scene. There's also stuff with Typhon or whoever else you think would be relevant to bring up. Do you have any thoughts? There's also Terminus. Any other Terminus stuff? I touched on Terminus already, but what do you think is
Yeah,
relevant?
I heard you touch on Terminus. Did we already deal? I mean, I think we already dealt extensively with the adultery of Ares and Aphrodite, so maybe
Yeah,
no more of that. I don't know.
yeah,
Um, Let me see.
yeah. That's a
Just
key one, which we touched on that in our previous stream for sure. So that is a key one to
okay.
keep in
So
mind.
let's see. Maybe if there's anything. Okay, I'm looking into Hesiod. Um, Let me see. By the way, if you were going to say something, keep going. I'm just
Okay,
getting
sure. Sorry.
pretty into
Yeah,
this.
just letting
Yeah.
you take a moment to get your bearings. And again, appreciate you for joining. So I was just going to jump over to Sashuko, who is this Nart saga figure. And I'm actually forgetting if he is more the Caucasian or Ossetian. I know there's divisions there, which I'm not super familiar with, but there's a couple. There's basically like two main branches of Nart sagas, if not a third one. But so yeah, I'll just read through this. It'll give something to chew on. Wondering, is this another one of these Vishnu forms? When we understand it in the way I've described, because again, there's this concept of the overflowing heat that can be like volcanic, and it has creative and destructive, has positive and destructive aspects to it. And so, is this? I'm going to just kind of see what you guys think, and Josephus, you can respond as well. So this is from just a summary from an article. So it's a summary of Sosruko's story, essentially. So, and from I think multiple sources about him. So, quote: the plots describing the death of Sosruko contain direct reminiscences related to the universal archetypal motive of a dying and resurrecting deity, characteristic for many ethnic cultures. The Narts cannot kill Sosruko, and not daring to approach the defeated hero as close as the length of his sword, they bury him alive, making a high mound over his body. The Narts conspired. We will not let Sosruko die in this world. We will send him alive to another world, make him suffer, and they buried him alive. Sosruko did not die. He sits alive under the ground. Every spring, when a quail cries coo and burdock starts growing, Sosruko shouts from under the ground. When the sky is blue, the earth is green. I wish I could appear above the ground at least for 7 days, go freely around the earth. I would tear out the eyes of all my enemies. I would raze to the ground everyone who causes injustice on the earth. He wants to destroy everyone who causes injustice. So that's fascinating. It reminds of the Mars Naton, where his fiery heat manifests in intensity of virtue as well, right? So Sosruko wants to actually destroy those who cause injustice on the earth. Sosruko lives alive under the ground, and his call is turned to the world. How Sosruko was killed. Every spring, Sosruko's moans are heard from under the ground, people say. In another tale, disappearance of abundance is associated with returning of the hero. Disappearance of abundance from the world of the dead. For a long time, they were saying that Sosruko would resurrect, and at the moment he steps on the earth, abundance would exhaust. So this could be familiar. This could be reminiscent of Typhon, his fires kind of bursting out, right, and scorching the earth, potentially. There will be no abundance, not even sufficiency on the earth. Long time ago, when the Nart Sashuko had not yet returned to this world, there was such abundance on the earth. What I now treat you with is the remnants of the past, let from my deceased sons. Now people do not have and cannot have such abundance as the Nart Sashuko resurrected. If Sashuko returns, the earthly abundance will exhaust. Okay. The giant resurrected by gods on the request of Sashuko, a caravan of camels, can go through a hole in his thigh bone. Exclaims, so there's the hole in his thigh bone also is interesting. Exclaims, there was a talk that if Nart Sashuko returns, abundance will exhaust. Now you appeared and the earth lost its abundance. In other words, the birth and rebirth returning of Sashuko to the earth from another world, the world of the dead, bears eschatological connotation. So it reminds of, Fenrir's fully destructive side coming out in the eschaton, in the Ragnarok, and as well as the Boroformile kind of being the manifestation of the arrival of the end times for Finn and the Fianna. In another tale, the tears of Sashuko breaking through the earth and becoming the hot springs cure the sick people. So this is fascinating, right? His tears become hot springs. He's associated with this emerging heat in the waters, and it's having a positive effect. It's not this evil, destructive force, even though it can be. He can obviously be destructive. It's actually positive and curing. The motive of the cyclic resurrection, restoration of the world is also present in the tale, which associates the yearly coming of spring and resurrection and blossoming of nature with the image of the buried but alive Sashuko. Since Sashuko was buried alive, spring comes every year, everything blossoms and grass shoots from under the ground. So it's almost like, to me, it's like things are blooming because he's under the ground, providing life energy, in a sense, this heat from within the ground. It's not just that he's gone necessarily. It's almost like because he's in the earth, he is this nuclear reactor of vital energy, tejas, coming through, blooming with life, with blooming into the blossoms and grass shoots and things, right? So that's one way to read it, at least. Sashuko lies under the ground alive, and his call is turned to the earthly world. He wants to banish those who do evil and injustice. He calls, and tears run from his eyes. At the foot of the Caucasus, the running hot springs are the tears of Sashuko. If I cannot help people, let my tears help them. The sick people, touching the tears of Sashuko, became quite healthy. Sashuko is bandy-legged and, like Tlepsh, lame. Legs in different versions, knees or thighs, is the place where Tlepsh, the blacksmith, held with tongs when tempering, the only vulnerable place on the iron body of Sashuko. The motive of a vulnerable place on the invulnerable body, or motif, rather. According to some variants of epic tales, Sashuko dies of wounds. His legs are cut off during Nart festive by a wheel, literally sharp wheel. According to others, he is buried alive and continues to live under the ground. Okay, so just something to think about, right? And he gets tempered by the blacksmith, his iron body, and he has this one vulnerability. He has lame legs. So I have pointed out where Achilles and Krishna get shot in their vulnerable spot on their foot, and I've pointed out how it's possible there are other things like this. One thing I find fascinating, I wasn't able to find this text again. It's a text I found previously, and I can't remember which Purana this is in. I think it's a version of the Skanda Purana, but I couldn't find it. But like I mentioned previously in this stream, Varaha Vishnu has a son named Vrika, which means wolf. Vrika is bound by Skanda in fetters. So clearly Vrika is very important to our parallel. He's within the Vishnu mythos, a son of an avatar of Vishnu, and he gets bound like Fenrir does. But then there's another Vrika. There's at least one other. I think there's multiple, but there's one other main Vrika in these Puranas, and it's the son of the demon, Andhaka. That's interesting, first of all, because Fenrir is the son of Loki, the demonic figure. So this could, this other Vrika could be another, I think it could be another aspect of Vishnu in his like wolf, his sort of demonic wolf form, kind of being broken off and grouped with demons, maybe. But what's interesting is this Vrika, son of Andhaka, which if someone can research that and find the text where it describes Vrika, son of Andhaka, it would be helpful. Actually,
Yeah,
okay,
it
anyway.
was the Bhagavata Purana.
Okay,
So
thank you.
it was not the. I think you
Yeah.
mentioned another Purana, but yeah, it's the one that I just mentioned, the Bhagavata. I'm hoping to find the quotation.
So
If I do, I
yeah,
will share the
if you
screen.
can, let me know. Yeah, I'm going to do a quick summary so it'll actually save a little bit of time. And if you find a passage, that's great as well. But so essentially, Vrika is this once again this rampaging force that is threatening everything, and the gods have to bring him under control. And what they do is they actually make his front legs disappear. He loses his leg, two of his legs at least. Okay, so he's like legless or something like that. Okay, um, because he's this destructive force. But then he keeps like returning. I think he makes his legs reappear seasonally, something like that, where he returns to rampage until finally Vishnu is the one who has to contain him and control him. Okay, very fascinating, right? Within this parallel that we've sketched out, this figure, he's like cyclically returning to rampage and destroy, and he's lame, he has this defect in his legs, and his name is Vrika, which once again parallel. So you know I think some of that it can't quite be coincidental, but everyone can kind of come to their own conclusions about that. But that's fascinating as a parallel to Sashuko, right? Sashuko, as we just read, he's like gone, and they're worried about him coming back to destroy everything, and he's lame of leg, and he seems to have this parallel. Okay, where yeah, it's like I haven't done like a full video on this that's concise because there's all these fragments that kind of like come together, and you can see how this could be a parallel, but it's hard to like draw a perfect line between these. Okay, so yeah, what do you think about any of that, Josephus? Do you think Sasruko has enough to say he's definitely a Vishnu parallel, or would you have any counterpoints on that or any thoughts?
I mean, definitely it's always hard to decide. Definitely, we do see a lot of things in common with material of Typhon and overall with the other Vishnu parallels. So yeah, definitely there's a lot to go on, and hopefully the evidence that we're bringing forth can be evaluated also by our audience. So
Yeah,
if they have any
yeah, exactly.
criticism or any praise thereof, it's always welcome.
Yeah, and I should say, one folk etymology of Sasruko, one folk etymology is from Circassian sa sword, wa hit, and sar heat, and qua sun. So son of the fiery or heatful sword hit. So heat is potentially in his name, but I don't know if that's actually. It says there's other etymologies, but anyways, he's clearly connected to heat in some way. And in a previous discussion, I can't remember where I went into this, but I discussed also. Oh yeah, in my Mercury video, Celtic Mercury, we have the figure Kihol Grichenkos, right? Kihol Grichenkos, and he fights against Parhalon. Okay, Parhalon is the Rudra type once again, a Finn type. So his antagonist, but the thing is, Keyhole has essentially Fomorians. He's the lord of the Fomorians. The Fomorians are very much like Rudraic, like Ghana associated. They have like distorted limbs and things, and weird one eyes and things like this that remind us of the Rudraic Ganas and Rudras. But here we have an opponent of our Rudra figure who has these Ganas. But I realized that in the battle between the boar Vishnu Varaha and Sharabha, who's Shiva, in the Kalika Purana, they both have Ganas. So Varaha has a host of Ganas that fight against Sharabha and his Ganas. And in that story of them fighting, there's a long passage describing the distorted limbs of the Ganas. Okay, so I think this is the explanation of Kichol Grichenkos. And Kichol Grichenkos, his name parallels the Gaulish Kikoluis, Cicoluis, or something like this. Kikoluis is said to, if you read his Wikipedia, it suggests that he may have been consort of Litavi, the earth goddess, and Belenas, I think it's, or Belenas, or something like, sorry, what's her name? Anyways, I'm saying the name wrong, but it's the female Bella, warrior goddess. What is that? Anyways, if you look up Cicoluis, Bellona, right? Bellona. Okay, I apologize. So Bellona.
Yeah, Bellona.
Okay. So the point is, Bellona, war goddess. Well, we know that Nate, his consort, is the main war goddess Nevin, who embodies the terribleness of war. And we know that Varaha Vishnu is consort of the earth goddess. Well, Kikoluis is consort of the war goddess and the earth goddess, suggested by the fragmentary evidence we have, at least. And so therefore, Kikol Grichenkos really, from this angle, really looks like he could be a Vishnu fighting in the sort of Varaha, with some of the Varaha elements when Varaha fights Sharabha, okay? And if that's the case, we find that Kichol is, his name means clapper leg. So he is lame of one leg. He has a clapper leg. Okay. So, and his name means something like meat, apparently meat, and that could refer to like strength or something like that. Meat, flesh, muscle. So it could mean that. But I did find it fascinating that Varaha becomes the meat of the sacrifice at the conclusion of this very exact story. Varaha is the boar, so he embodies the meat of the sacrifice by being the boar, and they all eat him. They consume him in the sacrifice in the conclusion of that story of the Kalika Purana. And Kikol, Lewis, could mean, it says it's from Kiko itself, from Proto-Celtic Kiko, meaning meat, flesh, muscle. Okay. Middle Welsh, Kig still means meat. Okay, Irish, Kich, big muscle or great breast. It could also mean, though. It could just be like a strength thing. But it's interesting, right? Because he's paralleling these things. So if that's the case, you then have another Vishnu with a lame leg, right? Which could then parallel Sashuko with the lame leg. So I wanted to kind of just point out that fascinating triangulation and the potential for a parallel that's there. Okay, so that's kind of that's what I believe at this point. But of course, this is why this is the sort of extended speculative Vishnu stream. Okay, right? We've gone over I think the Cú Chulainn Fenrir parallel is very strong, and I think some of these other things are more speculative, but you can see that there may be this theme of an aspect of Vishnu with the sort of lame leg, or some sort of vulnerability in the leg, things like that keep cropping up. Krishna having a vulnerability in his foot that leads to his downfall. Yeah. So did you have any sort of Greek stuff that you wanted to touch on? Any documents you wanted to bring up, Josephus?
So I was wondering if you had already touched on the birth story of Vishnu or any of the Vishnu parallels. We have here some interesting description of his birth in the Homeric hymn to Apollo. So if there's anything that maybe we should want to look for in this comparison, I have this here.
Okay.
Then obviously Apollodor's account of the fight between Typhon and Zeus mainly and the other gods. And also I took the Proteus passage in case it was relevant, although maybe I'm not sure to what extent it should fit into the Vishnu broader narrative.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, start with that first one you mentioned, I guess. And
yeah, with the birth of Typhon.
Perfect.
Okay, so basically, it starts by saying that the well, it starts by describing Typhon as Argaleon, which means obviously causing much pain, right? Bringing about pain, and as the suffering for mortals. So it's a very strong language. This Typhon is really getting is really presented as something terrible, and his birth is obviously reflecting that. So he's begotten by Hera, Kolos Amene di Patri. So she's wrathful against Zeus the father, because Zeus, the son of Cronus, has begotten the glorious Athena in his own head. And for this reason, the noble Hera was wrathful, and she spoke to the assembled immortal gods and said, "Listen to me, all gods and all goddesses. As Zeus, the gatherer of clouds, has started to offend me, and he has started it, therefore uh, he made. Let me see what Kedna is supposed to be. Okay. Um, so after he made something that caused concern to his proper wife, and without me has begotten the blue-eyed Athena, who is beloved by all the blessed deathless gods. Um, Autaro e okay, so and at the same time, here, okay, so what is Padanos? Let me see. Okay, so and since my son Hephaestus, whom I begot by myself, was weak, having taken him with my hands, um, I threw him into the White Sea. So she's referencing to the fact that she had begotten Hephaestus previously without the intervention of Zeus, and of course he turned out to be a weak son, so she had to do away with him. And of course he was saved by Thetis, the daughter of Nereus. So that's all that we know. Yeah, it's going really for a lengthy flashback of the birth of these other deities. But basically, the main concept here is that Hera doesn't accept the fact that Zeus can beget Athena on his own, so she intends to give birth to a child on her own without the intervention of Zeus. And of course, she gets help from the earth and the sky, so the ancestral gods, the grandfathers of Zeus and herself, and from the Titans, who are of course supposed to be in Tartarus. And apparently, what are these helpers supposed to do for her? Um, okay, they're supposed to keep the child away from. Okay, to help her conceive the child without Zeus. That's pretty lengthy speech to justify this conception. And so, of course, having said this, the earth was shaken, almost as if an earthquake kind of imagery happened. And of course, she rejoiced in her heart, and she thought that her intention had reached a fulfillment. And so, okay, so basically, what happens next? Let's see. That's pretty lengthy for a birth account. Once again, remarking that. So, of course, then we have the same language repeated. So once again, we have mention of Typhon. This time he's apparently born. Um, and what that's interesting here, he gave evil to evil. So I mean, um, presumably it's a reference to whomever was entrusted with caring for the child. Let's see if the notes clarify it. They don't. Interesting. But yeah, presumably it's a reference to him being entrusted to some other creature or enemy of the gods, such as we are used to seeing. So, what can we say? I'm not really even sure how this ultimately ties into the broader narrative. It's clear that there's some implied parallelism and also shared etymology between Typhon and Pytho, which is, of course, the place where the Pythian Apollon's oracle will
Mm.
be eventually set up, and of course, the Python, the monster. But I'm not sure to what extent
Yes.
this is original and to what extent this is maybe an inheritance.
Right. That's interesting. And I always found it interesting, sort of the complex way that Hera, it was Hera, right? And she's trying to have this child in this. How would you describe? What adjective would you put? A secretive way or
Yeah, definitely
complex?
a secretive and maybe even antinomian, right? So
Mhm.
she's trying to undermine the
Yeah.
sovereignty of Zeus in some way, and
Yeah.
she's quite successful, considering that Typhon eventually is able to at least temporarily overpower Zeus. So she's
Right.
definitely successful.
Yeah, I would say that I have tried to sort of find a parallel between this and Cú Chulainn's complex birth, and it's not exactly you can't exactly find a clear through line, but I will just sort of read a summary of Cú Chulainn's birth, um, conception, because like it's this other strange thing where um, it's unclear who the father is. There's like drinking of a small thing from the waters, and also like the first conception, the child. There's like three conceptions in a row, almost like what, like or two or three. And okay, okay, just keep in mind that Lu is like Zeus as well. Okay, so it says Dectina is the daughter of Conchobar. Okay, and accompanies him and to hunt a flock of magical birds. As snow begins to fall, Ulstermen seek shelter in a nearby house. As the host's wife goes into labor, Dectina assists in the birth of a baby boy, while the mare gives birth to twin colts at the same time. The next morning, the Ulstermen find themselves in the Bruna Boyne. So it's like a magical transportation, I think. The house and its or it's been or what was it? The snow was falling and they didn't realize that's where they were. But either way, it's like a mystical. So they're suddenly in the Bruna Boyne. The house and its occupants have disappeared. Okay, the house disappeared, but the child and the colts remain. Dectina takes the boy home. So the boy. Okay, so the boy was the child of the mysterious host of this magic of this otherworld place. Dectina takes that boy home and begins to raise him as her own, but the boy falls ill and dies. Then the god Lu appears to Dectina and tells her he was that host, that mysterious host, and that he has put his child in her womb, who is to be called Shatanta. Her pregnancy turns into a scandal as she is betrothed to someone else, Shwaltam Makroic, and the Ulstermen suspect Conchobar of being the father, that's Dectina's own father. So she aborts this child that Lu just gave her and goes to her husband's bed, virgin whole, quote unquote. She then conceives a son, whom she names Shatanta. So it's this like triple conception that happens uh, with scandal involved and a weird subterfuge. It's like, and she actually aborts the child that Lu, the king god, gave her, and then she like reconceives Very strange, right? In the later,
This
better
very
known.
strange thing also reminded me of the mention of Hephaestus earlier. So just as Hephaestus is an imperfect son and is thrown into the
Mm.
waters as a sort of worthless child,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so maybe the aborted child in the story could fulfill a similar
Hmm.
kind of role.
Good point. Good point. In the later and better known version, uh, Dectina is Conchobar's sister instead, interesting, and disappears from Evan Macha in the Ulster capital. As in the previous version, the Ulstermen go hunting a flock of magical birds, are overtaken by a snowstorm, and seek shelter in a nearby house. Their host is Lou, but this time his wife, who gives birth to a son that night, is Dectina herself, and the child is just named Shatanta, so that Lou is clearly the father in that case. Um, so the nobles argue over which of them is to be his foster father. Okay. In another version, the child is named Shatanta. Kate takes Shatanta into fosterage. Okay, I thought there was a, because I know the conception of Conchobar involves Nessa drinking a drink that has these small creatures or like little worms, two worms in it. I thought that was like repeated in a similar way in the conception of Cú Chulainn. But anyways, I don't see that as an issue here, unless it's just not being mentioned in the summary. Maybe like the final conception involved her drinking something as well in a similar way. But in any case, yeah, it's like it is interesting that it's like Hera's the wife of Zeus, and it's like she's trying to have a child that isn't his, but will be kind of gain the same sort of inherited role or something as a son of Zeus, right? Or something. I don't know if you'd put it that way, but yeah, I don't know. It's so I've always just like puzzled over this, wondering if the sort of death and rebirth, if that could have anything to do with the way Typhon is born and his association with serpents as well, because I swear there's a version where like the final conception is she drinks a worm or something, but I could be wrong. And then there was some, I know I asked you about this a long time ago. There's some like weird Scholia version or mention where like yeah, there's like worms involved with or like Cronus. I don't know. Okay, it's too much. It's too complicated. What was the key thing in this one that you just read about how did that mention like the burying in the ground as well?
Yeah, the bearing the ground, I guess the ground of Pytho in this case.
Yeah.
So when also it's interesting, Pytho also ends up becoming the navel of the word. So maybe there's more to the womb symbology somewhere in there. And also, I mean, Delphi, Greek Delphoi, is probably from the same root as Delphus, meaning womb. So
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely a lot of symbology surrounding the womb, the belly, and therefore possibly birth in some way or another. So definitely it's possible that some
Mm-hmm.
traits of these birth narratives are common.
Yeah,
Though of
it's too
course,
hard to figure
especially
out.
in the case of Hephaestus,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there has been some interweaving with other tales that were also part of the tradition, and maybe these interweaving in
Mm-hmm.
the Greek case makes it harder to maybe clearly isolate what's
Yeah,
relevant to Typhon comparisons as
true.
opposed to other comparisons.
And then in the Cuchulainn version, the euhemerization, and it's clearly a complex story. So with variants, so some confusion, I think, very well could be introduced in the euhemerization as well, and things like that. So it's something to ponder over, though, a mystery. So okay, I have to go in exactly 20 minutes. Do you want to read another text to consider here?
I mean, maybe we can have a quick look at one of the texts, but at any rate, we will try to make it, we'll try to make it quick.
Hmm.
So what's an interesting thing is that whereas this Homeric hymn that we previously read implies that Typhon is the son of Hera alone begotten with help of the earth, the heaven god. and the Titans. So it's a kind of complicated birth, but still Hera is the main parent and the only actual biological parent. On the other hand, there's this other version here reported by Apollodorus and probably following actually Hesiod, by which the earth is the mother of Typhon. The father, according to Apollodorus, is Tartarus, which is supposed to be the lowest part of the earth, as opposed to Hesiod, who apparently has other versions for the paternity. At any rate, the earth in this version is a matter of Typhon. I don't know if there's any parallel for that in the other traditions. Maybe there's some reason to look into that, especially maybe you mentioned Litavi. I don't know if the context was fitting. Litavi is ultimately a cognate of Prithvi, the Sanskrit name of the earth goddess. So of course, I mean what's a very interesting thing actually is that he basically Typhon is described as hurling rocks, and this is, in my opinion, somewhat a mirror image and also a contrast to what Zeus usually does, right? Zeus is the god of lightning and thunder, so of heavenly phenomena, but he was also associated with flint, which was considered as a form of thunderstone and was thought to have originated from thunder, and was also used as a way to produce fire. So in some way, it was analogous to thunder. In that both could produce fire.
Someone wants you to zoom in on your screen if you can. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well,
Oh, I don't know.
um,
I was just saying someone was suggesting to zoom closer to what you're reading, but it doesn't matter.
oh no. Well, if I mean I can zoom harder, but it was kind of going off a lot around
Ah, okay.
a very small section, right? In this
That's good. That's good.
very small section, which we can also find in the Greek. Let me highlight in the Greek as well. But basically, yeah, it's just the hurling rock element that actually got me to think. Uh, Got me to think about the possibility that he was kind of uh, conceived and perceived as a counterbalancing of Zeus, right? So Zeus is
Yeah,
also
yeah.
associated with rocks, but in rocks that could produce fire, so specifically flintstone. But at the same time, we have Typhon hurling kindled rocks, so rocks that can also produce fire or that are on fire pretty much. And so this is, in my opinion, interesting in the characterization. It's almost as if Typhon is an anti-Zeus that eventually gets defeated. Hoping not to go too close to Christian theology on this one.
Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting though. I think he gets subdued under Etna and but it's almost like that esoteric concept you could read into it, you could theorize that esoterically he's still giving like the heat from under the earth, like a sort of nuclear reactor under Etna, under the world axis in a way, esoterically. Yeah, I think that's how I
Yeah,
see it in my mind, and it's going to burst out in the end, like we see in other places at least. That could be.
yeah, definitely. And also, I mean, once again, Hephaestus kind of comes up. Because Hephaestus was regarded as the god of the earthly fire or fire under the earth, right? And Typhon himself is also a form of fire under the earth, since he is placed under Mount Etna, and Etna is an active volcano to this day. And actually, volcanoes owe their name to the god Vulcan, who was identified with Hephaestus. So once again, it all kind of circles back around the idea of fire being hidden under the Earth's surface, and also this fire being in some way a lesser fire or a devalued fire compared to heavenly fire. Of course, as we see in the case of Typhon, he's devalued in that he's defeated eventually by Zeus and he's imprisoned under Mount Etna. But at the same time, Hephaestus is also devalued as a weakling, as possibly impotent, and at any rate being cheated upon by Aphrodite. And actually, John Lydus, I mean, we already mentioned it in the other stream, but John Lydus kind of draws a distinction between the barren fire of Hephaestus, the earthly fire, as opposed to the fertile fires of Ares, who is the aerial fire, and Zeus as the heavenly fire. So the topic seems to come up a lot in mythology, specifically. Specifically, of course, in figures surrounding both Typhon and Hephaestus. So, I mean, I'm
Yes.
seeing at the okay. I'm
He's
seeing
trying to explain
at the comment. Okay,
yeah,
so there's probably a reference
yeah,
to
he's not
the
just a serpent, exactly. So that's what I was trying to get
yeah.
across.
I think that the snakes on the altar of the ancestors is a reference to the Roman practice of depicting, also Greek probably, of depicting a couple serpents on altars, which were probably interpreted, at least among the Greeks, as the agathos daimon, so the good genius of a person,
Hmm.
possibly as the ancestors in the Roman case. At any rate, yeah, I'm not sure to what extent it ties to Typhon. It probably doesn't. I mean, there are probably plenty of other animals um, that we can associate with Typhon, but even more importantly, plenty of other figures that we can associate with snakes,
Mhm.
more closely than with Typhon specifically.
Yes, yeah, yeah. That's the thing. It's like when we read about him, we think the serpent association jumps out most prominently. You'll see him with like serpent legs and serpent family connections or connections to Python, like you mentioned potentially. Um, but really, when you look closer at the material, he has the voices, like the voices of multiple animals come from him. I think this is points us back to the sort of multiple animal avatars of the Vishnu type at large, and the association will get narrowed in each different branch in a different way. Okay, so that's kind of like how I would explain that. Like it got narrowed down to the wolf imagery in Fenrir. It got maybe the serpent aspect kind of got more associated with Typhon, but of course, Vishnu himself is associated with the serpent Shasha and that sort of thing. So like there's a serpent aspect that can come out, but Typhon has these multiple other aspects as well. It's interesting in the Varaha story. It says he's like transforming between like three different animals at rapid pace at one point, where like you can't tell. He's like blurring between animal forms, like three different animal forms. It's very strange. It's like jackals, lions, and boars or something like that. Um, so yeah, I think that's a feature that came through from this type. That's my theory, at least. And I like to think that maybe like the Set animal is like a mixture between animals like that too. I don't know, because Set is a parallel, but it's hard to say. Okay, what else was there? Okay, I wanted to just mention the Proteus idea since we're on Mediterranean stuff as well, and running out of time, 10 more minutes. But basically, like in the legendary material of the Iliad and Odyssey, um, you do have um, Menelaus. Menelaus is the Mitra type hero, and we've traced how Zeus is actually in his fundamental type is like Mitra dominant, even though he's like the totality sovereign. So he's really Mitra Varuna slash even Yama over esoteric overlap or whatever. Okay, so what? Yes, he does. In the Kalika Purana, he's transforming between jackals, Varahas, and I think Narasimhas, it says. Narasimhas, which is his lion form. He's transforming, it says he's transforming rapidly between them while he's fighting Sharapa in the Kalika Purana, chapter 30. So you can check it out, Vivek. Okay. And yeah, so let's see, what was I saying? So you have Menelaus as the Mitra type. So he's essentially in the, he is an echo of Zeus, as Agamemnon also can be seen as a partial echo of Zeus slash the Poseidon role, because Poseidon is really more Varuna. But in any case, Menelaus would be like the most direct Zeus parallel. and the king, the sovereign king, and he is. This is when he's trying to travel home, right? Josephus, when he comes across Proteus, he needs to, or is it not? Is it earlier?
Um,
Forgetting
so
now.
really, it's not extremely clear, but Menelaus does get the help of a nymph or local sort of goddess figure who advises him on how to capture Proteus. He abides by her advice, and so he's successful in luring Proteus, I think, with food and binding him. And after binding him, he successfully gets him to tell him about relevant information that concern both his return home and also the fates of his companions of the other Greek heroes.
Exactly. Perfect.
So, in the specific case of Proteus, yeah, it's definitely interesting that we have this kind of parallel. I was also kind of thinking of an other direction for the parallel, especially considering these stories about yaksha, so these sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
intermediary beings that are used as a disguise by Dharmaraja
Right.
to test Yudhishthira, and we already have other parallels between Yudhishthira and Menelaus. So maybe we still have an echo of that, the idea that the righteous sovereign must in some way be able to pass the test and extract knowledge from these entities that are ultimately either disguises of or sent by the god of justice, so the very god of whom the lawful sovereign is the incarnation in the story, right? But yeah, they're definitely worth keeping in mind.
Yeah, it's worth keeping in mind. So I wanted to just say that he's also like Proteus. He's capable of transformation, right? He's protean. He is. He's like shapeshifting, right, or something? Is that?
Yeah,
Anyways,
Proteus is definitely able to shapeshift,
yeah,
and I think actually I don't know if there's any specifics on the animals that
it may not
he.
be,
Let me look into the
but it
text.
has this concept that we were just touching on, where Varaha is transforming into multiple animals, and Vishnu as a whole has it was either 12 avatars or whatever of Vishnu with multiple different animal types. He becomes the tortoise, he becomes the boar Varaha, and he has all these, and the Narasimha, the lion. So he becomes avatars. He transforms in that sense as well. So that's interesting. But also, I wanted to just, and also Matsya the fish, Kurma the tortoise. Um, yes, yes, and so the what I wanted to say was like he's also Narayana, of course, which is the god of the waters, sort of primordial waters in a sense. And you have Zeus versus Typhon that we just went into is this uh, pro- prominent Mitra versus Vishnu type, a destructive aspect of the Vishnu type battle. You then have Menelaus binding Proteus in this sort of interesting moment that it could echo that battle is what I'm also suggesting. It could have an echo of that, although, like you said, it also echoes the yaksha was it that
Yeah, the Yaksha stories,
yaksha
yeah,
stories. So
in especially concerning
different ways
Yudhishthira.
to think about that. Yeah, yeah. And Yudhishthira
Yeah,
is
also
the one. Yeah,
not strictly relevant to this. I'm noticing an interesting comment here, basically saying that venerating Vishnu as a supreme being will
yeah,
result in Typhon as a supreme being. I think that this person should, this commenter and people who are interested in this comment, should have a look at Greek magical papyri because they do mention Typhon a lot.
yeah.
And it's probably implied that
So
Typhon is sort of the raw power of the universe that the magician can direct in different ways with the different words of power and
Exactly.
gestures and incenses and whatnot.
Exactly. So I'll give my little take on that as well. I just wanted to close off the water thing because we have Proteus. He's like a name of the old man of the sea. The old man of the sea is this like primordial figure. Also, the name Nereus comes up. So Nereus, I don't think it's etymologically connected to Narayana. I think we've looked at that before, but it's similar. It's this sort of phonetically interesting, similar name. Reminds one of Narayana, god of the waters. So the point is, Vishnu has Narayana and also Matsya, the fish, two very, very water-associated forms, extremely, with primordial associations in those water forms. We then have the old man of the sea who has the names like Nereus and Proteus. Proteus is a shapeshifter who's bound by the incarnation of Zeus, whereas Zeus himself, of course, fights Typhon. So I would put it out there that some people might not be satisfied to say Typhon is the Vishnu aspect. I'm saying Typhon is the destructive Vishnu aspect, and Ares has Vishnu material that we went into. Terminus for the Romans has a lot of Vishnu. He is the more prominent. But what if there's even more Vishnu? What if the old man of the sea under Proteus and Nereus could potentially be the more water side of Vishnu and this more primordial aspect? So I think that's worth considering, at least. I don't know if you have any like criticisms of that possibility or if you think that's possible. But we also have this mysterious figure in Irish called Tethra. But Tethra it's like the Lord of Waters somehow, but very obscure what he is. And the fish are called the cattle of Tethra or something like that. Okay, very interesting. But Tethra also is like the voice of a sword at one point, or something like that, or Tethra's sword speaks, rather, something like that. And then there's another point where Tethra is like a female. It's like a male and a female. So that reminded me of some of the Vishnu male and female side thing. So I'm like, maybe Tethra is one to consider as well in that watery. Is there a watery Vishnu in Europe? That would be interesting, but hard to pin down. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. It's clear that there must be some water connection, although it's very interesting in the passage that we just mentioned. Proteus transforms himself into water and then into fire. So once again, pointing at some
Right.
sort of non-duality.
Good catch.
Although obviously his habitat is clearly in the waters on an island together with seals. So clearly, the water element seems predominant. Maybe also some degree of earth element. Once again, with Typhon being buried in the earth in Pytho, so maybe that there's also this kind of element. But then, or in Cilicia, according to Apollodorus, but still some sort of earth connection is clear. Probably all the elements are involved to some degree. The watery elements are definitely interesting, especially as they may contrast more sharply with the fiery and thundering Zeus or other kind of lawful sovereigns and other social gods, quote unquote.
Yes. Okay. So that's a great answer. So some things to think about. Unfortunately, we didn't get to go into the Gandhara, the like Gandharva or Gandharva of the Avesta material. It's this figure who lives in a lake and is demonized and is like described as like it's a word for a werewolf. Okay, reminding us of Fenrir. And also I think there's something connecting him to like dragon as well, dragon / werewolf, but I can't look at the eronica.com here. Well, let me just read it real quick if there's any. See, okay. The Stackberg's comparison between Gandharva and the name of a mountain read as Kondrasp is problematic. See Ska Ervo with Azdaha, the Semitic sea monsters, and the Manichaean water dragons, Mazans. Okay, that's different. And then it says, it's noteworthy that Garashasp, the one who kills the Gandharva, killed a dragon coming out of the sea also, and that Sham in the Shanama slays a dragon. Okay, so a Sogdian. Okay, this is it. A Sogdian water sprite is Upapo Gandarbo, water sprite. The term survived as Zindurv, meaning werewolf in the Pamir languages. In the Pamir languages, Gandharba means werewolf, and it's a fantastic monster. Okay, so something to consider here. Some overlap with dragons, but it's like a water werewolf kind of monster, actually, or the word survives meaning werewolf in these related languages. So you have to consider that the word Gandharva came to mean something entirely different, basically, in the Avestan and Pamir and connected languages, different than the Vedic Gandharva. Okay, I think there's a possibility that there's a linguistic sort of mix-up happening if you try to identify the Avestan Gandharva with the Vedic one to one. I think just like it's like words can come to mean something entirely different in a different place, and then it gets attached, and it's a different actual deity underneath potentially, and that could imply a deeper like connection between them where the concepts overlapped originally, but it doesn't mean they're the same being. You know what I mean? So something to think about. Once again, you have like a werewolf monster of the waters, so that's interesting. Remember, Fenrir is the marsh. He's of his very name means he's the fen dweller, dwells in the fens or marshes, like a watery, the border of the waters and the land, or what have you, the swamps and marshes. Okay, and then the Gandharva is called the Yellow-Heeled. Zairi Pasna, Yellow-Heeled. That's his main description. He's a horrible aquatic monster who attacked open-mouthed, destroying the material world of Asha. That's what this Iranica encyclopedia says. Okay, open-mouthed, yellow-heeled werewolf of the waters, who has to be defeated by the hero. That's interesting because yellow-heeled is the name of Yoki Salvuithe, which I can't pronounce, but this Irish figure, Salbuide, means yellow-heeled. And I always wondered, who is this yellow-heeled figure? Because he's at the very top of the genealogy of the Ulster men. He's the grandfather of Conchobar. Conchobar is like the cosmic egg Prajapati figure. Okay, so I think Yoki Salvuithe could be a Vishnu preserving this yellow-heeled attribute from a very deep esoteric meaning. Because why do you have him in this really high level of the genealogy? As the father of Nessa. Nessa is like Vach Saraswati or something like that. Vach Durga, something like that. And her father is this yellow-heeled. His name means horseman yellow-heeled. Okay, and he kind of is mysterious. I think that's another instance of, just like Nate is at the very one of the highest positions in the genealogy, so is Yoki Salvuithe, the yellow-heeled one. And yellow-heeled parallels this Iranic Gandharva. So I think all the pieces are there, even though there's only a few pieces. There are some pieces you can consider. Okay, right? Very interesting. And then just as for the big theological question, and then I have to just like sign off really fast because I have to go. But basically, you see that Set is worshipped, and Set is this parallel. Set is kings name, or pharaohs name themselves after Set. And I go into in my Set and Typhon video, I recommend watching that because it talks about how esoterically the king had to kind of like unite Horus, who's the Mitra or Zeus, and Set, because they're kind of like Set is this sort of, like I said, nuclear reactor of energy of the cosmos that has to sort of be united into order with the king to kind of form the perfection of the total king. So it's almost like when it's an esotericism where, like, when Zeus defeats Typhon, he integrates that Typhonic power by placing him under the world axis that leads him to be able to be the totality king himself. It's like he creates the cosmos by doing so, and also perfects the role of the king in himself. Okay, so that is there in the set material. Clearly, Typhon was invoked, like Josephus said, in the Greek magical papyri, and Cú Chulainn clearly is positive overall because he shows the whole span of what this type is. He's a much fuller presentation. If you narrow down just to the Bora 4 mile, you would be like, this is a destructive force. Why should this be worshipped or whatever? The same thing goes for Fenrir. Because of the other aspects have been either forgotten or suppressed, it appears only the evil, only the destructive side, whatever is found, is left. Although Fenrir is never called evil, he's called the bane of the gods or something like that. The bane of Odin, I think, like the killer of Odin. Yes, but that's a fact. Different gods kill other gods, like Shurabha kills Narasimha in the Linga Purana and gets called the killer of, it's like Hara, Hari, killer of Hari or something like that, Hara Hari or something. Okay. Anyways, each god kills the other one in different ways, but it's sort of like it's part of the story of the cosmic cycle, and these gods are these much bigger forces, and we're sometimes looking at a narrower piece of what that is. So yeah, it's up to each, I think, tradition and each person whether that is something to pursue or not. So I can't really say. But for the Celtic material, we have the much bigger picture, and so it's not really a problem. It's not a negative deity. He just has destructive sides, but so does Finn McCool. So does Rudra has destructive sides. So if you narrow down to a destructive side, it becomes a negative or a scary picture or whatever. So that's all I can say on it. I have to go. Please watch my other streams on the topic. Okay, thank you so much. And thanks, Josephus, for being here. I gotta run. I ran out of time.
Thank you for inviting me, and good evening to everyone.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.